All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. As we continue to work towards the start of the 2024 National Football League season, right now I'm going to take this time to talk all things NFC East. And, for the most part, this NFC race over the last several years has been a two-team showdown. It's been basically between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys, as with the exception of 2020. For the most part, for the last decade, it has all been about the Eagles and the Cowboys, with a couple of division titles sprinkled in here or there by the Washington Commanders. Most people expect these two NFC heavyweights to slug it out once again. But will the New York Giants and Washington Commanders have something to say about that? We just got to wait and see. But in regards to the Eagles, most teams around the NFL last year would have been more than happy to finish the year 11-6 and get to the postseason. But that was not the case for the Eagles. Okay. We saw Philly get off to that 10-1 start, and it looked like, hey, this was going to be a team that was going to get back to the Super Bowl for a second consecutive year. But then from there, Philadelphia limped to the finish line. They only won one out of their last six games. And then that stupor of a finish to the regular season carried over to the playoffs, where they were embarrassed in the wild card round, courtesy of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that stupor of a finish last season for the Eagles has led to a slew of changes in the city of brotherly love, as the Eagles want to get back not only to the playoffs, but they want to go out there and make another run at that coveted Vince Lombardi trophy. So you look at things. We saw after the Eagles got to the Super Bowl, they lost both of their coordinators, both the offensive and defensive coordinators. Each one of them got head coaching jobs around the NFL. Shane Steichen with the Indianapolis Colts, and then Jonathan Gannon with the Arizona Cardinals. Didn't work out last year. So now Kellen Moore, the former Chargers and Cowboys offensive coordinator, is replacing Brian Johnson, while the veteran Vic Fangio, who was just with Miami last year, is taking over as a team's defensive coordinator in place of Sean Desai. One big question, and this is a question that is going to have to be answered. Will the Eagles have better chemistry than they did last year? That's going to be a big thing. One thing's for certain: they are going to have more electricity on offense, as if the Eagles already didn't have enough of that. We saw Philly as soon as free agency started. What did they do? They had their sights set on all pro running back Saquon Barkley. And what did they do? They signed him, and they signed him away from the rival New York Giants. And you look at a guy like Saquon Barkley. Of course, he burst onto the scene a couple of years ago for the Giants when they took him. I think it was second or third overall back in 2018. Had a couple of big seasons to start off. Then, of course, the injuries. The Giants are just and have been a bad organization for quite some time. We saw him have a strong 2022, which was a contract year. Didn't get the extension that he coveted. Came back and had a solid 2023, even though he was dealing with injuries. But nonetheless, the Giants were not willing to commit big bucks to him long term, and Philadelphia was. I do anticipate Saquon Barkley having a solid season for the Philadelphia Eagles for a variety of reasons. Number one, we are talking about a guy who has something to prove to the New York Giants, because he's probably going to feel like, hey, this team didn't want to commit to me long term. He's going to have something to prove to himself. He's going to have something to go out there and prove to his critics as well. And he also wants to prove his worth to his new team. Clearly, the Eagles offensively are a much better team than what Saquon has been accustomed to with the Giants. You got a better offensive line. You have more talent at the skill position. You have a better quarterback. So when it's all said and done, all 22 eyes defensively are not going to be on Saquon Barkley. He's going to be a cog in this wheel that is the Eagles' offense, and I think he's more than happy to do that as long as it results in winning. Still got that dynamic tandem at the wide receiver position if you're the Eagles, and I'm talking about Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. You cannot overlook tight end Dallas Goddard, and then of course quarterback Jalen Hurts. Hurts last year was not running as much. I think that dates back to the knee injury from the previous year. At the end of the day, Jalen Hurts didn't look as comfortable in the pocket last year. Okay, and I think in order to get him more comfortable, I think Philly needs to run the ball more. Jalen Hurts threw a lot of interceptions last year. Okay, he has got to cut down on that. He threw 15 interceptions to be exact a year ago. He's got to try to cut that in half and just get back to allowing the game to flow to him. And I think he's going to be able to do that, especially with Kellen Moore calling the plays and a strong running game with Saquon Barkley. Losing a veteran though, like Jason Kelsey on the offensive line is huge for this Eagles team, and I want to see how they react to that. And it's basically the same for me defensively for the Eagles because just like you lost Jason Kelsey, you lost Fletcher Cox, and Fletcher Cox on that defensive line was a tone setter for the Philadelphia Eagles. And we've seen Howie Roseman do a very good job of drafting in recent years. And now is the time where you need some of those young studs, some of those kids that you've been drafting out of the University of Georgia in recent years. Are they going to be able to step up and take over? Your Jordan Davises, your Jalen Carters, your N'Kobe Deans, and your Nolan Smiths. These guys got to step up and make an impact. I like the signing of veteran linebacker Devin White. And of course, Devin White does bring Super Bowl championship experience to Philadelphia from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think he can have an impact in this defense. And then you look at that secondary with the likes of James Bradbury and Darius Slay. Some people want to go out there and say that Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni is coaching for his job. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I'm not sure. But the bottom line is all he's done is win in his 3 years with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think the Eagles keep on winning here in 2024. Now, the stiffest competition for the Eagles in recent years in the NFC East has, of course, been the Dallas Cowboys. They've won 2 out of the last 3 NFC East titles. And of course, they're looking to make it 3 out of 4. But one thing for certain with the Cowboys, they're coming off of 3 consecutive 12-5 seasons, but you're the Cowboys. And you're still going to be judged primarily by what you do or don't do in the month of January. And of course, now for nearly 3 decades, we have not seen Dallas get past the second round of the postseason. You got to go back to 1995, of course, their last Super Bowl year. You just have to wonder if this could be a make or break year in more ways than one for Dallas. Now, you've got head coach Mike McCarthy. He's entering the final year of his contract. McCarthy's 42-25 during the regular season in Dallas, but he's just 1-3 in the playoffs. Will this be Dak Prescott's final year as the starting quarterback for the Cowboys? He's 73-41 as a starter during the regular season, but of course, just 2-5 in January. And of course, included in that is or was a pair of costly interceptions in Dallas's wild card round loss last January at home to Green Bay. Now, for Dallas, their run game took a huge step back this offseason, okay? They just lost Tony Pollard in free agency to the Tennessee Titans. And then if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, you really can't sit up there and get excited and say, hey, well, you know what? We just brought back Ezekiel Elliott. And of course, Zeke spent last year with the New England Patriots. Ezekiel Elliott has not been the same runner in about 5 or 6 years. So if you're the Dallas Cowboys, is your offense going to be more one-dimensional this year? I truly believe so. And with that said, your best option, your best playmaker on offense has yet to report to training camp. And I'm talking about CeeDee Lamb. And, we know what CeeDee can do as a wide receiver. We know how important he is to this Cowboys offense. We know where he ranks among the top pass catchers in the National Football League. Dallas has got to take care of CD sooner rather than later, because if they don't, their offense can have a real problem. Why? Because the productivity level from their wide receivers drops off immensely past him. You still got tight end Jake Ferguson. You've got veteran Zach Martin on that offensive line at guard. You lost longtime tackle Tyron Smith, as he is now with the New York Jets. So it's really going to be interesting to see what this Dallas offense looks like as the season goes along. Now, we saw Dallas lose defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, as he is now the head coach of the Washington Commanders. But then you bring in former Minnesota Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer can coach up a defense. Remember, once upon a time, he was a defensive assistant with Dallas. And then, of course, he went on to fame as a defensive coordinator with the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think he can go out there and keep this defense flowing like it was under Dan Quinn. Micah Parsons, another guy, phenomenal edge rusher, but are the Cowboys going to pay him? They're going to have to pay him sooner rather than later. I'll tell you that much. Dallas is hopeful to get a healthy Trayvon Diggs back in the secondary. Remember, he had that ACL injury last year that impacted that back unit. Deron Bland led Dallas last season with 9 interceptions. Will he be able to put up some numbers like that again? We've got to wait and see. I look at this Cowboys team, the talent level at the top among their elite players is there. But there's a huge drop off. And again, like I said, Dallas has got to go out there and take care of CeeDee Lamb. If they don't pay CD, they're not going to have a leg to stand on this year with the big boys in the NFC. Now, you've got the New York Giants. And of course, you look at this Giants team and the 2023 season, there was some optimism if you're a Giants fan. But that optimism died basically before the season got started. We saw that blowout loss that the Giants suffered in week number 1 at home to the Dallas Cowboys, and it was a downward spiral right from there. They began the year 1-5. They lost starting quarterback Daniel Jones to an ACL injury, and of course, the rest is history. We've seen plenty of changes this offseason for the Giants, but will those changes rather result in Big Blue being a playoff team here in 2024? Losing Saquon Barkley at running back was big, especially due to the fact that they lost him to the Philadelphia Eagles, a division rival, okay? So it's going to be running back by committee, which is led by Devin Singletary. Not as much wear and tear on the tires if you're Joe Shane, the Giants general manager for Devin Singletary, as is Saquon Barkley. But, Devin Singletary is not the home run hitter that Saquon Barkley was. We just got to wait and see what type of impact he has on this offense. What type of impact will first round wide receiver Malik Neighbors have on this Giants offense? Malik Neighbors, phenomenal talent. You can see the potential there. Great explosiveness at the line of scrimmage off the jam. But it's one of those things the Giants have to get better in their passing game. Why? Because only Carolina was worse at passing the ball last season than New York was. And then to give you an idea of that, the Giants have not had a 1,000-yard receiver since Odell Beckham Jr. all the way back in 2018. We've seen another attempt by the Giants to try to go out there and fix this offensive line as they brought in former Las Vegas Raiders offensive line coach Carmen Brasillo, as he's going to try to help to coach this unit up. We got to wait and see what happens there. Of course, will Danny Dimes be able to stay healthy for the Giants? And it's one of those where I know there are going to be some Giants fans, and I'm sure they're already in place as far as people who are upset that they let Saquon go and they paid Daniel Jones. Okay, it's one of those. This is more than likely, honestly, going to be Daniel Jones's last year with the Giants because they do have an out on his deal. He's a guy that in his 5 years with the Giants, okay, they've been injury riddled. He's only made 16 starts in a season one time. His record as a starter is 22-36-1, 62 touchdowns, 40 interceptions, and 179 sacks. Daniel Jones, okay, was sacked last year 30 times. That is a problem. Why? Because Daniel Jones only played in 6 games. And I know that the Giants have gone out there, they've tried to make changes to their offense, this, that, and the third. I'm going to, have some people agree with me with what I'm about to say, and I'm going to frustrate some people with what I'm about to say as well. The bottom line is this: you can take a pile of manure and you can roll it in powdered sugar and you can sprinkle all of the cinnamon on it that you want. It's still a pile of manure. The bottom line is this: we've seen enough of Daniel Jones to know what he is and what he isn't. And what he is not is a starting quarterback in the National Football League. So the Giants can go out there, they can get all of the talent at the skill positions that they want. The bottom line is, if they don't have that guy at quarterback, it's not going to amount to anything. And the bottom line is, Daniel Jones ain't that guy. So again, the Giants are going to be very hamstrung this season offensively. The Giants defensively, though, they're moving on, or they have moved on from Wink Martindale, and they're bringing in, or they brought in, former Tennessee Titans defensive coordinator Shane Bowen. But the changes to the Giants defense didn't just stop there. We saw the Giants go out there, they paid a steep price, giving up draft picks as well as paying defensive end Brian Burns, the former Carolina Panthers, but they're hopeful that he can make an impact on their defense. 46 sacks in 5 years with the Panthers. And I think Brian Burns will make an impact on this defense, because you look at it, between him and Kayvon Thibodeau, the Giants' first round pick from a couple of years ago, both of these guys have the potential to combine to get at least 25 sacks. We've seen Kayvon be a double-digit sack guy by himself. We've seen Brian Burns be a double-digit sack guy by himself. Now you're bringing them together, and now you're giving New York those dual edge rushers. So it's one of those things: if you're an opposing offense, pick your poison. So I think Brian Burns can have an impact on this defense. Dexter Lawrence continues to get better. He's a player on that defensive line that really improved under Wink Martindale. What's he going to do in this Shane Bowen defense? We have to wait and see. And then are some of the young guys that we've been seeing the Giants draft under general manager Joe Shane, are they going to be able to step up and deliver? And I think that they will, because I look at the defensive side of the ball. The Giants are looking to create more pressure. And you do that with the likes of Burns, and you do that with the likes of Kayvon Thibodeau. I think that's going to help that back seven be able to go out there and make some more plays. Some people are saying this might be a make or break year for Joe Shane and Brian Daboll as the Giants general manager and head coach, respectively, unless the Giants are really bad, and I mean really bad. Are we going to see those changes? Because you look at it like this: if you're John Mara, the Giants co-owner, okay, you've been bad for quite some time. You last won the Super Bowl in 2011. You've had two winning seasons since then. You've made one trip to the postseason. And if you look at some of the issues with the Giants, they've had a lot of turnover at GM, and they've also had a lot of turnover at head coach. For Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, they're heading into their third year together with the Giants, and they do have a postseason trip on their resume. The bottom line is this: this was not going to be a quick fix for the New York Giants. And even if the Giants can show signs of improvement this year in comparison to last year, I still think they are a work in progress. And if you're John Mara, I don't think you want to give up on Joe Shane and Brian Daboll as of yet. I think Brian Daboll is a solid head coach. I think Joe Shane, is working on things as a general manager. And I know that people are going to ridicule him for paying Daniel Jones and not paying Saquon Barkley. And as of right now, that's going to be attached to his hip, fairly or unfairly. But the bottom line is this: I do think this combo is back for the Giants in 2025. And finally, there's the Washington Commanders. And for the folks that follow the Commanders, I am sure that they're tired of the term starting over. But this is what this franchise is doing right now. And of course, we know that they're starting over for a variety of reasons. You brought in a new ownership group. So, of course, that new ownership group wants to bring in their GM. That GM wants to bring in his head coach. That head coach wants to get his quarterback. So we saw all of that go down. We've got Dan Quinn, like I said, the former Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. He's the head coach. And of course, for Dan Quinn, he did have a previous life as a head coach in the NFL, especially with the Atlanta Falcons, which is highlighted by leading them to the NFC Championship back in 2016. Washington used their first round pick on former LSU quarterback, almost at Arizona State, because he did begin his college career there with Jayden Daniels. And they are hopeful that he's the future. And they're basically giving him the keys to the franchise as they are named him as their starter going into the season. What do you do if you're Washington and you're Dan Quinn and your new GM, Adam Peters? You bring in a offensive coordinator that you're hopeful will get the most out of Jayden Daniels, and you bring in former Arizona Cardinals head coach Cliff Kingsbury, who's going to be calling the shots on offense. One thing for sure with Jayden Daniels, I guarantee you he's going to get on the same page with veteran wide receiver Terry McLaurin, very early on. Now, the Commanders were dead last in the NFL in defense last season. Will that change? That has got to change, okay? If Washington is going to make an impact. I do believe, though, that Dan Quinn will coach these guys up on a Sunday to Sunday basis. He'll have them ready to play. Will that result in enough wins for the Commanders to be respectable? I'm not sure. One thing's for sure, like I said, in recent years, it's been a two-team race in the NFC East. And I think that tenor remains the same. I think it's going to come down to Dallas, and I think it's going to come down to Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia's got a point to prove this year from head coach down. Okay, a lot of guys on this team have something to prove, especially after the way that last year finished. If you're Dallas, like I said, they got to go out there and pay CD because Dallas can't go out there and beat a JV team if they don't have CeeDee Lamb out there. Okay, that's the bottom line. So if you're Jerry Jones and you're Steven Jones, you need this thing to get done sooner rather than later. And if it spills over into the season, it's going to cause a problem because it could be a situation a la what we saw from the Cowboys 31 years ago when Jerry didn't pay Emmitt Smith. And of course, they were lucky to get back on track and repeat as Super Bowl champions that year. And Jerry almost messed with the sauce that year. He's messing with the sauce again. Granted, this Dallas team is not a Super Bowl worthy team, in my opinion, but nonetheless, you cannot be a playoff contender without CD. But when it's all said and done, I think the Eagles go out there and take care of their business. And that's why I'm picking Philadelphia to win the NFC East here in 2024. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. And as we continue to navigate through each division, looking forward to the start of the upcoming NFL season, be sure to check out this channel tomorrow night as I will be talking all things in the NFC West. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. And I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.